Evam parampara praptam imam rajarshya vidu sakaleha mahata yogo nashta parantapa. Put there. So this is Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, Transcendental Knowledge, text number 2. The supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciple succession, and the saintly kings understood in that way. But in the course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is appears to be lost. Can everyone hear? Good. Report. It's clearly stated that the Gita was especially meant for the saintly kings because they were to execute its purpose in ruling over the citizens. Certainly, Bhagavad Gita was never meant for the demoniac persons who would dissipate its value for no one's benefit and would devise all types of interpretations according to personal whims. As soon as the original purpose was scattered by the motives of the unscrupulous commentators, there arose the need to reestablish the disciple succession. 5,000 years ago, it was detected by the Lord himself that the disciple succession was broken, and therefore he declared that the purpose of the Gita appeared to be lost. In the same way, at the present moment also, there are so many editions of the Gita, especially in English, but almost all of them are not according to the authorized disciple succession. There are innumerable interpretations rendered by different mundane scholars, but almost all of them do not accept Krishna, do not accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, although they make a good business on the words of Shri Krishna. This spirit is demoniac, because demons do not believe in God, but simply enjoy the property of the Supreme. Since there is a great need of an edition of the Gita in English, as it is received by the parampara, the disciple succession system, an attempt is made herein to fill this great want, Bhagavad Gita. Accepted as it is a great boon to humanity, but if it is accepted as a treatise of philosophical speculations, it is simply a waste of time. Well, Vishnu, but I'll read the verse again. Evam parampara praptami mamrajarshyo vidu sakalening ha mahata yogo nashta parantapa. The supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciple succession, and the saintly kings understood in that way. But in the course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is appears to be lost. Namo Vishnu Varaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivendanta Swami Prabhupada Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Vacharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Haskadyade Siddharana. In the first verse of this chapter, Krishna says, Imam Vishvate Yogam Proktavan Aham Avyayam Vivishwan Manave Praha Mano Ishvakave Bravit. That Krishna originally spoke this knowledge to the sun god Vivishwan. And similarly, that knowledge was received through a chain of teachers and disciples. In other words, Krishna consciousness depends upon Krishna's message being distributed in an unbroken line of teachers. And that unbroken line of teachers applies not just to repeat the knowledge, but to repeat the knowledge with some realization. Prabhupada writes in the purport, according to personal whims. So this has also been explained in the 16th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says, Yakshastra vidim usrija vartate kamakarata nasasidim avatnoti nasukam naparam gatim. That those who give up Shastra and work according to their, Prabhupada translates, whims, attains neither peace nor happiness nor the supreme destination. And whim means, according to our philosophy, Trivida narakasyedam dwaram nashitam atmanaha kama kroda taya krodas tasmat etam trayam chajet. Which means Trivida narakasyedam. And narakasyedam means the lowest state of existence known as hell. Naraka. Trivida narakasyedam. So Trivida, there are three things that lead to this hell. Lust, anger, and greed. That every sane person should become free from them because they lead to the degradation of the self. Now in the Vedic system, there's a science of becoming free from lust, anger, and greed. That is matrivat paradareshu, paradvareshu lustravat, atmavat sarabhuteshu, yat pashyati sapanditaha. To see every lady except for one's wife to be like one's mother, or to see every man except for one's husband to be like one's son. To see everyone else's property to be like garbage in the street, or to see, and also to see every living entity except, or to be just like one's own self. So this is the Vedic culture. The Vedic culture is meant to regulate one's sense enjoyment so that one can properly see how everyone else is and everything else in this material world is in relationship to at least Vishnu, to follow the rules and regulations that Vishnu has given us and to restrict our sense gratification accordingly, and at the same time engaging yajna or sacrifice for Vishnu. Niguna, you'll have to turn off your, mute your sound, Niguna. Nirguna? Can you hear me, Nirguna? Nirguna. Okay. Yes, thank you. So in other words, the more we restrict our sense enjoyment, then the higher our consciousness becomes. At least in the Vedic culture, the more we engage in sacrifice for Vishnu, then the more our consciousness becomes elevated, and simultaneously we can restrict sense gratification. So Varna and Ashram, Varna is meant for sacrifice, and Ashram is meant to gradually restrict sense enjoyment. So in the mode of ignorance, that one thinks oneself to be the proprietor, and one sees others' property as possible opportunities to acquire. One sees other living entities in relationship to one's sense gratification, and one believes that one is superior to others, or one is envious of those who are superior, or one is competing with those who are on the same level, or one is trying to keep those who are inferior down so that they don't come onto the same level. So the mode of ignorance, one is trying to become the proprietor. In the mode of passion, one is trying to become the enjoyer. And the mode of goodness, one is trying to become the savior, the leader. So ultimately, these are different phases of trying to become the supreme. So the Vedic culture is meant to reduce these things to the minimum. But Krishna consciousness, that Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita to the sun god, and which was passed down in the disciple succession, even goes a step further. Bhoktaram yagatapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suridam sarvabhutanam gyattvamam shantim richiti. That in the mode of ignorance, we give up the mode of ignorance by accepting that Krishna is the proprietor of everything. That basically is our sambandha, is our philosophy. That Krishna is the proprietor of everything. And if we can accept that, then we can find out how to utilize Krishna's property and utilize it for Krishna's pleasure. That means that Krishna is the actual enjoyer. And by doing that, we can give up the mode of passion. And when we accept that Krishna is the actual friend, and that what we are, the best we can become is an instrument for him, then we can come to the mode of goodness and eventually take up real devotional service. And the more we take up actual pure devotional service, that is working on the intermediate platform, then the more we actually come to the platform of making spiritual advancement, being able to concentrate our minds on and give our love to Krishna, which is what the Bhagavad Gita is meant for, to convince us that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that he's the actual enjoyer, he's the controller, and he's the real friend, and that we're supposed to become his instrument to help others understand that Krishna is the controller, that Krishna is the enjoyer, and that Krishna is the friend. Now, in the material world, everyone wants to become either a controller or enjoyer or claim themselves to be the savior of others. And this is called, when they take Bhagavad Gita, they whimsically interpret it according to their own modes of material nature. So this is natural. This is how the material nature works. One can only see according to the mode of material nature that we're covered by. We can't see past our modes, at least not practically. Theoretically, we can see beyond our modes, but we can't actually experience beyond the modes of nature that we're covered by unless we engage in pure devotional service. So pure devotional service specifically is meant to help the conditioned soul work on a platform that gives the soul an opportunity to experience something beyond the modes of material nature, namely Krishna consciousness. Therefore, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Naham prakasha sarvasha yogamaya samavrita mudayam nabijananti lokayam ajam avyam. That I'm never revealed, Naham prakasha sarvasha. I'm never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. For them, I am covered by my eternal creator potency, Yogamaya, and so the deluded world knows me not, who am unborn and inexhaustible. So we have to work for Krishna, in other words. We have to become conscious of Krishna enough so that in our dealings in this material world, that we have a sense of Krishna consciousness in spite of whatever particular activity we're doing. Whether we're working in the temple or we're working in a job, that sense of Krishna consciousness should be developed. So that means Shastra is the basis. We have to memorize Shastra. Now, memorizing verses is not what we mean by memorizing Shastra. We have to memorize the vision of Shastra, especially the vision that everything here belongs to Krishna. And then we have to develop the service attitude, inquiring humbly, inquisitively, intelligently, so we ascertain what Krishna wants us to do under different circumstances in order to please him and fulfill his mission. Then, when we rise up to that platform of becoming inquisitive and meditative, assimilating the knowledge that we've acquired so that we can understand what Krishna is trying to tell us through Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, so that the super soul in our heart is able to give us clearer directions. Then the next stage is we have to do things in such a way as to try to please Krishna. That we should have no goal in life save and except to act in Krishna consciousness just to satisfy Krishna. So what does that mean, to satisfy Krishna? It means to create a spiritual family in which there are 6 loving exchanges that are shared by the devotees, and they're shared appropriately. ISKCON already has so many nice communities all around the world. But we have to deepen the 6 loving exchanges between the devotees so that they're shared appropriately. Appropriately means that Bhagavad Gita teaches us how to see devotees on different levels of consciousness and to serve them appropriately. As it says in Nectar of Instruction, Krishneti yasigiritam anasadriyeta dikshasti tat pranitivi shabhajantam isham shushu shaya shabhajana ananya anya indati sunya hridayam isita sangalabdya. That one should mentally honor the devotee who chants the holy name. One should cooperate with the devotee who is, and offer obeisances to, the devotees who have undergone initiation and engaged in worshiping the deities. And one should faithfully serve that pure unalloyed devotee who is advanced in devotional service, but his heart is devoid of the propensity to criticize others. In other words, loving exchanges, offering gifts in charity, revealing one's mind in confidence, inquiring confidentially, accepting charitable gifts, offering prasad and accepting prasad. These are loving exchanges between the devotees, but they should be shared appropriately. That for those who are senior to us, who have more knowledge than we do, we have to learn from them how to theoretically, we have to learn the theory of Krishna consciousness as well as its practical application by observing the devotees and how they're actually manifesting the words of Krishna in Bhagavad Gita and how they're faithfully repeating them. So those are considered to be those who are more consistently, more enthusiastically, with more appreciation for the good qualities of the other devotees, those who can instruct us how to become more steady in our own service and more enthusiastic in our service, more priti purvakam, with more affection, more love. They should be our gurus. They should be our teachers. And those who are on the same level as we are, who are trying to cooperate to serve the deity in the temple and cooperate with the Sankirtan movement, we should learn how to adjust our own vision, our own practical activities in order to cooperate with them to fulfill the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu together. Not only to help each other advance in Krishna consciousness, but also to make plans to help the innocent people and to avoid the atheists. And for those who are Bali Sheshu or less advanced than we are, then we should encourage them by our practical behavior and by our instructions how they can become more steady and more enthusiastic in their service to Krishna. And for those who are chanting the holy name but don't follow very strictly, then we should not be very much concerned to give them instructions, but by our own example, help them, and at the same time, not intimately associate with them in order to become influenced by them, or possibly to commit offense by trying to instruct them in ways that they're not willing to receive. Now, the job of every devotee in the movement is to understand that that's their service. Even we have an initiating spiritual master, the service of the initiating spiritual master is to train his disciples in participating in these loving exchanges appropriately. So anyone who has an initiating spiritual master but is not able to discriminate and differentiate these different levels of devotees either is not taking advantage of the instructions coming down in disciple succession. Everyone should have many, many devotees that they see in different ways as instructing them and assisting them in advancement in Krishna consciousness. One should have many devotees they're cooperating with in order to spread Krishna consciousness and assist the deity worship in the temple or sadhana together. And one should see many, many persons as objects, or even devotees, as objects of mercy and trying to help them become Krishna conscious. then we'll be actually acting on the spiritual platform, and we ourselves can make spiritual advancement, and our movement can not only grow numerically, but also Krishna consciously. Prabhupada didn't want simply to count the number of followers within our society. He also wanted to see the quality of the devotees that are being created, so they actually develop transcendental vision and work on that platform, not just theoretically, but practically. Then we actually will create a spiritual family where we actually have spiritual vision, and that spiritual vision will inspire us to actually utilize our energies in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission under the guidance of Srila Prabhupada and his representatives to encourage others to join Krishna's family also. But unless we actually practically and by our own experience come to the level of seeing ISKCON as part of one spiritual family, then we'll be very limited in our aspiration, our enthusiasm, and even the intelligence coming from Krishna, how to create a bigger spiritual family than the one we already have, or even to maintain the spiritual family into the future. So here in this verse, Krishna is saying that the message of Krishna consciousness is quite simple and quite pure, which is explained throughout the Bhagavad Gita. And if we apply it, then our individually will advance, and our society will become, as Prabhupada said, better organized and have more intelligence. How, as Prabhupada writes in 1865, how we can organize our life in such a way that throughout the 24 hours a day, we cannot help but think about Krishna. And the Lord's assurance is that anyone who does that is sure to go back to the spiritual world. So that's what good management is: organizing our lives, organizing our temple, organizing our family, organizing everything we can with intelligence in such a way as that throughout the 24 hours a day, we cannot help but think about Krishna and engage in Krishna's service. So I'll stop there for now and ask if there's any questions.
So in case there are any questions, just unmute yourself and ask the questions. Or if anyone here in the temple room has a question, they can come forward and just sit in front of the camera and say something.
Bhakti, beginner, you had a question? But Engel, you can just unmute yourself.
We have a question from ISKCON Oslo.
Okay, let Bhakti Engel go first.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
What is your?
I have to my name is Franka, Bhaktin Franka. Engel is the family name.
Okay.
I'm only 5 years in Krishna consciousness, and I'm already 50 years old. And I have the situation with two devotee friends that I'm not so experienced in Krishna consciousness. I'm not initiated, but I chant at least 16 rounds every day, and I read a lot, and and do deity worship. And then are devotees which are much longer in Krishna consciousness than me, about 20 years, but at this time they do not so regularly sadhana, and then I experience confrontations between that I'm younger, I'm not so experienced, but I do regularly sadhana, and they are longer time in Krishna consciousness, but they don't do regularly sadhana, and this is discrepancy for me, and I don't know how I behave properly. Could you ask me, please? Could you tell me, please, what I should do?
Well, do your sadhana. Don't, our vision of what it means to be an elderly devotee. Lord Brahma lives for 311 trillion, 40 billion years. And one moment in his life is approximately 90,000 to 100,000 of our years, one moment. So that means in one moment of Brahma's life, we go through 1,000 births and deaths, that we live for 100 years. Now, so our conception of time is rather distorted. Brahma only lives for one exhalation of Mahavishnu. So the reality of time is something different. So the fact that someone's in the movement for 20 years or 50 years or 100 years, we can't really see from that. Although we respect devotees, senior devotees, we can respect them. We're trying to learn how to appropriately respect every living entity. Even an ant we have to respect, because within the ant is Krishna. So the fact that someone, quote, is in the movement for 20 years, we appreciate that. But we actually judge the devotee not by the number of years that they're in the movement, but by what level of devotional attainment they've obtained. That's how we associate with them. If they're actually strictly following, they're more steady and more enthusiastic than we are, more loving, more appreciative, then we take instruction and example from them. If they're up practicing on the same level of sadhana and appreciation than we are, then we try to cooperate with them. But if they're not following very strictly, and they're not so enthusiastic, they're not so loving and appreciative, then we respect them within our mind, but we don't associate with them very intimately. That's Rupa Goswami's instructions, I'm just repeating it. We try to find an association of superiors who can help us become more steady in our service, more enthusiastic, more appreciative, more loving. And we find others who are on the same level of appreciation, cooperation, steadiness, and we cooperate with them. Then we can advance in devotional service. And if there are others, they're certainly not inclined to take our example. They're not inclined to take our instructions, how they can improve. Then, and at the same time, we appreciate whatever they've done, and we appreciate whatever they're doing, but we just be careful about associating with them. Otherwise, we may disrespect them within our minds, and that will become an offense. So we try not to do that. Offensiveness, our process is bhakti. So for those who have a service of assessment and evaluation and engagement of others, they can do that assessment. It's not our service. We should be appreciative and loving more than try to become bewildered or resentful or critical of others. So appreciate them within the mind, but don't intimately associate with them.
Thank you very much, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Anything else? Oslo?
Yes, Maharaj. I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Last time that there was Zoom meeting, then Agnihotra Prabhu asked about something not related. So I want to ask about the Earth, that we say that it's flat, but I've been on the. Is it okay? I mean, I've been on the equator, and I saw that from one side there is one round. It turns to the water goes in one round, and so it's like I don't understand how, if it's flat, then how the equator can work.
I have no idea, nor is it important for this class, because whether the earth is round or flat, we still have to chant Hare Krishna. It won't help us, even if the earth is round or if it's flat, it has nothing to do with our pure devotional service. But don't worry, you're not going to fall off when you're chanting around. Anything else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, we're from ISKCON Oslo in Norway. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. First of all, thank you so much for a wonderful lecture. And we would really like to invite you to Norway whenever you can. We opened a temple here 1 year ago, and we would love for you to visit. I have a little question, and I wonder how to inspire, what is your advice on how to inspire devotees to be more inspired and enthusiastic for Harinam and for doing service? Because we are like a kind of like a small group of devotees that does most of everything, and then we have those who just pass by, and how to kind of more engage them also to join in the Harinams and just want to do more service. How can we inspire them more?
We'll have a balanced program. Just like in our body, we have different systems. We have our digestive system, we have our nervous system, we have our circulatory system. There are so many systems in our body. And a healthy body is a body that's balanced. If one system becomes too prominent, then all the other systems will become disrupted. And a healthy body will naturally grow. You don't have, if a child is 5 years old, you don't have to command the child to grow. He'll naturally grow. So similarly, if we have a balanced program in ISKCON, which is like a body, which has different systems. It has its outreach system, it has its devotee care system, it has its temple worship system. There's so many different systems. And if they're balanced, then naturally the ISKCON will be healthy, and the devotees will be healthy, and then ISKCON will grow. But if one thing becomes too prominent, one idea becomes too prominent, and everything is not systematically done and done in a balanced way, then things will become not spiritually healthy, and it'll become difficult to actually make any real progress. So the number of devotees is not so important. The health of the temple depends upon the balance. So there's a balance of studying Prabhupada's books, there's a balance of devotee care, of sadhana, and outreach, and many other things are all kept in balance. And you have a clear mission, what you're trying to accomplish. In other words, there should be a good management system where everyone knows what their duties are, what's expected of them, and that there is some appreciation given to the devotees, and at the same time some genuine assessment, where everyone feels that in a loving way they're being helped to improve in their service and in their sadhana, and that they can actually feel that devotees, that you're working as a team together with the same objective. So if you clarify your current situation, you clarify your objectives, what you're trying to accomplish, and you try to have a balanced program, no matter how many devotees you have, so that you systematically perform everything in a way that's balanced, then the result is that if you experience that your Krishna consciousness is growing, and that you have an educational program to help others grow also, specifically in deepening their commitment and their understanding of Krishna consciousness, then your enthusiasm will grow also. Everything begins with patiently hearing and then becoming convinced and having a clear understanding. And when the conviction and clear understanding is there, then one can work with enthusiasm. And as the enthusiasm of Krishna consciousness, or as Prabhupada says, to work with intelligence in Krishna consciousness, that's called enthusiasm. So it's working with intelligence and Krishna consciousness, or intelligence, work with enthusiasm and intelligence will actually produce Krishna consciousness. And that enthusiasm and that intelligently implying the enthusiasm will actually develop the devotees' Krishna consciousness and actually encourage others to take up to the process also. So that was quite a lot.
Thank you. Thank you, Maharaj. Anyone else here have a question? No?
One thing is that generally we lack a clear system of what we're trying to accomplish. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna at the end of Bhagavad Gita gives us a very clear system. He says, Manmana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mame vaishasi satyam te prati jani priyosi me. And then he goes all the way from sarva dharma parityajya, and then he goes over idam te na tapaskaya nabhaktaya kadachana. And then he goes over, ya idam paramam guyam mad bhakteshva vidashiti. In other words, at the end of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells us we should work on the Madhyama Adhikari platform. We should, first of all, hear about Krishna, manmana, and then we should hear about Krishna in such a way as we become his devotee. We understand why we should be devoted to Krishna and others. And then we worship Krishna by doing our service, our sadhana to Krishna, and then we namaskaru. Then we become committed members of the ISKCON society. When we make vows, like part of that is initiation or membership. Then after that, then we try to give up our unwanted activities so we can actually make advancement, become pure in our service. And then we give up our unwanted association with those who simply will not encourage us or help us become devotees of Krishna. And then when we become mature members in that way, then we'll have the spiritual potency to go out and help others become devotees also. Of course, at any stage, everyone we meet, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has told us, we should try to the best of our capacity, assist them in their advancement in devotional service. But one will become particularly effective if he goes through the whole process, and at the end, either to devotees or to the non-devotees, one becomes powerful enough to clearly give them what is the process of developing their Krishna consciousness, what stage they're on, what's the next stage of their development. If one can do that effectively. So our society should be organized in that way, whether it's a big society, a small society, that we see the greater community of people and we make plans to appropriately invite them to come to our association and find out what their needs are, what their desires are, what the conceptions are, and present Krishna consciousness in a way that will satisfy their needs and clarify some of their conceptions. So that means if we can make the temple a place specifically for new people, at least part of some programs we have specifically for new people should be made in such a way as they feel comfortable to be in the association of devotees, and that we actually, in our dealing with them and our explanation to them, even in the talks that we give, make them feel comfortable that we're actually satisfying their needs and their aspirations. And for some of those, then we bring them, those who have more interest. We have programs for those who become more serious, so that we bring them not only from what we can call the community to the crowd, but we also bring them into our congregation, so that we have regular programs for those who are more seriously committed and teach them the art of sadhana bhakti. And for those who make more commitment, then we bring them to the stage of membership. We have to define what our membership is, so that not only they vow to chant 16 rounds and follow the regular principles, but when they take initiation into the community of devotees. They're not only accepting one guru, initiating guru, but they're learning how to relate to every devotee appropriately and become instrumental to helping the innocent, and they learn the ability to avoid the atheists. So that's the level of commitment. And if they come to that level, then some of them will actually become enthusiastic to actually engage their talents in Krishna service, their energies in Krishna service, and in a more regular way. And out of those, we might get some actually powerful spiritual leaders if they're trained appropriately. And those powerful spiritual leaders can instruct those who are part of our society in the different ways, different levels of commitment and education, and also powerfully go out and invite others to come to our society and take up the process in a systematic way of developing their own consciousness to come to the highest level of Krishna consciousness. So we're a society that's focused in developing character. As Prabhupada once wrote to me, he said, I don't want buildings, I don't want money, I don't want any of these things. I want to see that my books are being distributed. And because you're doing that, therefore I'm pleased. So the purport of that was that, or as Prabhupada once wrote to me, he said, please study all my books. And sometimes afterwards, you'll have to help carry on the disciple succession. So the purport is our movement is meant to develop character, to bring people from the beginnings of consciousness to the highest stage of Krishna consciousness. Our buildings, our assets, and everything else are simply meant for that, to assist that. But without developing devotees to the highest state of consciousness and helping them come to the highest stage that they're willing to or potentially able to come to, then our society is not being properly directed. Because that's the purpose of our society, is to make pure devotees. The assets of the big temples, small temples, is not the point. Pure devotees is the point.
Maharaj, we have a question here from our audience.
Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, in your lecture you have told about to prepare our mind to accept the transcendental knowledge that coming from Krishna. So my question is that how can we prepare our mind with so much distraction, and how to remove all those noisy distractions, and how can we prepare our mind so that we can receive the transcendental knowledge which is coming from Krishna?
Well, pick up Bhagavad Gita, read one purport of Prabhupada's books, close the book, and see if you can repeat, how much you can repeat of that purport and the verse. And then open the book and see how much you repeat it, how much you remember. And then read the verse again. Try to fill in what you forgot. And then close the book and see how much you remember now. So keep on doing that until you can remember at least the essence of what's being said. And if you try and do that, then you'll have to, that requires concentration and understanding. Then take that verse and see how it compares to other verses. And that way engage the mind in trying to assimilate the philosophy of Krishna consciousness and see how the philosophy can be applied in your own personal life in a practical way. And then try to develop that vision and then apply it in your practical life. And the result is that you'll become advanced in Krishna consciousness, especially if you understand that part of the essence of that, we're utilizing these energies of Krishna in order to help others become Krishna conscious. So when we learn the science of Krishna consciousness and we become more steadily and sincere in helping bring others to Krishna's other children to Krishna consciousness, then the result is that Krishna will help us in every respect and reveal the science of Krishna consciousness to us, and actually ultimately reveal himself personally to us. Then we won't be distracted by insignificant things. When we actually experience Krishna, everything else will seem insignificant.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna. Anything else?
So if there is no other question, I have a question, brief question. So there are various people or various sectors that say that the Diksha lineage or the Parampara of ISKCON or Bhaktivinoda Thakur or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is in some way not authentic, that there is something wrong with it, that something is concocted, and there are different variations of that. So what do we do with that kind of criticism? Because sometimes they sound very plausible in what they say because they seem to be knowledgeable about various branches of the Sampradaya, and then they say, yeah, you actually don't belong there, you are not authentic. So what do we do with that?
Well, first of all, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, one who preaches my message to the devotees, devotional service is guaranteed. At the end, he'll come back to me. There's no servant to me more dear to him, nor will there anyone be more dear. So, did our Acharyas preach that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Yes? So how can it, and do they preach anything else that someone else was God?
No.
So how can it not be authentic? Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tatvataha tyaksvadeham punar janma naiti mam eti sarjana. One who can understand the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities will not, upon leaving this body, take birth again in the material world, but attain to the spiritual world. So if that's what we're teaching, how can it not be authentic? What do they mean by authentic?
They sometimes get hung up on those technicalities. They say it has to be an uninterrupted Diksha lineage, and then they claim that someone's Diksha was not authentic. And yeah, there are different varieties of that.
Divya Jnana Tatodhya, yeah. If we accept, first of all, we're coming from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's lineage. And we accept Rupa Goswami as our Acharya because he was instructed by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Jiva Goswami has told us, Divya Jnana Tatodhya, that the deliverance of transcendental knowledge means Diksha. So Diksha is a means to deliver Shiksha. So if the Shiksha is being delivered, then how can we say that there's something wrong with the Shiksha? In other words, Diksha is just an avenue to teach the devotee how to actually become surrendered to the Shiksha. But the Shiksha is going on correctly, and the Diksha is supporting the Shiksha, then, all these different things about the technicalities and this and that they concocted is not in line with our acharyas, at least. I don't know who they accept as an acharya. They don't even accept Krishna as in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna in Bhagavad Gita says, Tadvidi pranipatena pari prashnena sevya upadekshantite jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshanaha. That as far as Diksha goes, he says that one should accept someone as their spiritual master and serve him as a menial servant without false prestige. Satisfaction of the self-realized spiritual master is the secret of advancement in spiritual life. That unless there's service and inquiry, unless there's service and submission, inquiries from the learned spiritual master will not be effective. That one has to pass the test of the learned spiritual master, and when he sees the genuine desire of the disciple, he automatically blesses him with genuine spiritual understanding. So, if our teachers are giving us information how to become more steadily engaged in Krishna service with more enthusiasm and more appreciation, then the result is that Krishna will help us develop more enthusiasm, more steadiness. So if these loving exchanges are going on appropriately, if someone comes along and starts criticizing, then what are they criticizing? Then why should we listen to them? We can respect them within our minds, but we shouldn't intimately associate with them because they're not in line with the teachings of Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. Their bhakti is rather strange, criticizing our acharyas who spread Krishna consciousness all around the world, of giving people an opportunity to love and serve Krishna. They're criticizing them. So what is their position? They're not even in the realm of bhakti, but to speak of being, scholars of it. They don't even know the simple words in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says there's two energies. There's the devotional energy, there's Maya, Naham Prakasha Sarvasha, Yoga Maya Samavrita, Buddhayam Nabijananti, Lokayam Ajamavyam. That I'm never manifested to the foolish and unintelligent, that I'm covered by my creative potency, Yoga Maya, and so the deluded world knows me not, whom unborn and inexhaustible. So one is actually engaged in Sadatam Kirtayanto Mam, Itantas Chadridavrataha, Namasyantas Chamam Bhaktya, Nityukto Pastate. If someone is engaged in chanting Krishna's glories, endeavoring with great determination and bowing down before Krishna, then according to Krishna and Bhagavad Gita, they're Mahatmas. They're under the spiritual energy. Mahatmanas Tumam Bharata, Daiving Prakritim Ashritya, Vijantya Nainamana Sagyata Bhutidam Avyam. They're under the spiritual energy. And anyone who's criticizing them and saying that their process is not valid, all they're doing is glorifying Krishna and serving him with determination, then they're obviously under the external energy of Krishna. So we should respect them within the mind, but not intimately associate with them, because they don't even understand the most basic things in Bhagavad Gita. Is that all right?
Thank you.
One short question, Maharaj.
Okay.
Regarding the 6 loving exchanges. So when one reveals one's mind in confidence to another devotee, but that devotee chooses to use that confidential information against another person, then how should one deal with these devotees, that don't, how can you say, uphold this, the promise of keeping something confidential?
Well, choose who you're going to be confidential with carefully. But as far as confidential in Bhagavad Gita and Nectar of Instruction, this confidential knowledge, Krishna says, is the knowledge that Krishna gives in Bhagavad Gita. So to reveal our minds means to reveal our realizations about what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, not necessarily to reveal other things. Other things should be very carefully done if there's some reason to do it in Krishna's service. But revealing the mind in this way, in this context, the same thing as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, revealing Krishna's message. Now, if someone decides that they don't want to keep that message confidential, they're going to tell everyone about it, well, that's very good. Is that right? Okay, anything else?
There's another question here.
Yeah, I have Hare Krishna Maharaj. Please accept my humble obeisances. So my question is, every person is different, right? And we have different taste in devotional service. Like some people like to serve, some people like to hear the lectures, some people like to chant, some people like to do sankirtan. So like I really like to hear the lectures, but when I sit for chanting, right, best of the thoughts in the world that come into mind, and we really, I'm not able to focus on the chanting. So what practical tips that you want to give so that I can improve my chanting? I don't get much test. Rather, what happens is it's like just finishing the round. It doesn't go inside the heart.
Yes, chanting japa is a real test of what level of consciousness of Krishna we have obtained. We may be very proud sometimes, or maybe very enthusiastic about what level of Krishna consciousness we're on, but the test is when we chant. Because as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Apuryamana machala pratishtam samudram apha pravishanti advat tadvat kamayam pravishanti sarve seshantim apnoti nakama kame. Persons who are not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is always being filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. So the more we become filled in Krishna consciousness, the less we'll become disturbed by these incessant flow of desires entering into our mind. Therefore, in the next verse, Krishna says that one who's not karman sarvam pumam charati nispriha nirmamo nirahankara seshantim adigachite eshate vihita sankhya. Oh, is it 18, chapter 2. Vihaya kamiyak sarvam bhumam charati nispriha nirmama nirhankara seshanti madigachite. Person who has given up all desires of sense gratification, lives free from desires, who has given up all sense of proprietorship and is devoid of false ego, he alone can attain real peace. So by our hearing and by our practical service, gradually we can give up our development of Krishna consciousness. Then gradually we can give up these desires for sense gratification. We can live free from desires. We can give up our sense of proprietorship, become devoid of false ego. And then we can chant Hare Krishna and remember Krishna. So the other processes are assistants to help us come to the stage that when we chant Hare Krishna, we do it sincerely, calling out to Srimati Radharani and Krishna like a child calling for its mother, so that we actually spontaneously and naturally remember Krishna's forms, his quality, his pastimes, his associates, and we can actually feel his presence. So in that way, he'll become very nice chanting japa. But for now, these other processes like hearing and chanting and serving will also assist us to gradually deepen our understanding of Krishna consciousness and also our ability to give up these things, these impediments to actually chanting japa nicely. Hare Krishna. So even when we're not chanting so nicely, still we should chant. And then gradually that will help us hear better also. We have to be challenged. If chanting is very difficult, if it's a challenge, that's good. Because by our effort, Krishna becomes pleased. By our effort alone, he'll become pleased. Our sincere effort to try to get better, then Krishna will help us get better.
And that's the only hope I can see.
Yes, Krishna happens to be in our heart. And that's the only thing that he's trying to do. So we have a good possibility, since we have God in our heart trying to help us. I think we can be pretty assured we're going to get some help.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, so I think we'll stop there. Thank you all. Thank you for your association. Glory to Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. Thank you, ISKCON Oslo, and thank you to all the viewers and our viewers here in the temple. And we hope to see you again very soon. We'll hear from you very soon. It was very nice to hear the lecture and to have the questions and answers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Glory to Prabhupada. Glory to all services. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.